Before we start, quick reminder, firearms laws vary wildly by state and city, and this video is not legal advice or a substitute for real training. Always follow the law, get proper instruction, and handle every gun like it's loaded. Everyone tells you to get a 12 gauge for home defense. But what if I told you there's a lighter, quieter, easier shooting option that even recoil-sensitive shooters can run with confidence, and it still hits hard enough to stop a threat inside your hallway? That's the .410 shotgun. And today we're breaking down the ultimate .410 platforms every American should at least consider before they write this little shell off as a kid's gun. The .410 has always had a weird reputation. A lot of people think of it as the starter shotgun you give to a teenager for their first squirrel hunt. Others assume it's flat-out too weak for serious self-defense. But with modern defensive loads and smart platform choices, the .410 has quietly become one of the most interesting options for people who hate recoil, live in tight spaces, or just want something they can control under stress. Inside typical home defense distances, think 7 to 15 yards, the right .410 setup can put multiple pellets on target fast without beating you up or blowing your eardrums out as bad as a full-house 12 gauge. So here's what we're going to do. First, I'll walk you through why the .410 even deserves a spot in a home defense conversation at all. Then, we'll break down specific guns, pumps, semi-autos, lever guns, compact firearms-style guns, and even the controversial .410 revolvers. Along the way, I'll drop little decision checkpoints so you can figure out which one actually makes sense for you, because the ultimate .410 isn't the same for a 70-year-old retiree as it is for a younger, high-volume shooter running drills every weekend. Let's start with the core question. Is .410 enough for home defense? If you're imagining birdshot at 40 yards, then no, that's not what we're talking about. But inside real-world home distances, especially with dedicated defensive loads like .410 buckshot or specially designed personal defense shells, you're basically sending a cluster of small projectiles into a torso-sized target at hallway range. At 5 to 10 yards, pattern spread is still tight enough that you actually have to aim, but wide enough to give you some forgiveness under stress. That's the sweet spot. You're not getting 12-gauge brutality, but you are getting a controllable, repeatable solution that many people can run faster and more accurately. Listen, a gun you can actually control under pressure is more valuable than a cannon you flinch away from and miss with. Now, let's talk platforms. The first major category is the classic pump-action .410. Think of pump .410s like the Mossberg 500 series in .410 or similar designs. These guns give you a familiar layout, shoulder stock, tubular magazine, crossbolt safety, or tang safety, and a slide you rack between shots. With defensive .410 loads, recoil is significantly lighter than a comparable 12 gauge. That means quicker follow-up shots, more comfortable practice sessions, and less fear factor for newer shooters or smaller framed family members. A home defense-oriented .410 pump usually gives you around 4+1 or 5+1 capacity, depending on barrel and shell length. Add a short barrel, an open choke, and a simple bead or upgraded sight, and you essentially have a scaled-down tactical shotgun that you can mount and move with in tight hallways without feeling like you're swinging a fence post. If you're the type who likes mechanical simplicity, the pump .410 is a fantastic starting point. It's reliable, it's easy to understand, and it handles like a shotgun you've probably seen 1,000 times before. Just tamer. But maybe you're thinking, I want something even faster. I want less manual work between shots. That's where semi-auto .410s come in. Semi-auto .410s, especially gas-operated designs, tame recoil even more. You pull the trigger, it cycles itself, ejects the spent shell, and feeds the next one. For people with weaker hands, arthritis, or just low tolerance for heavy recoil, a semi-auto .410 can feel like cheating. You still need a solid stance and proper technique, but you're not fighting the gun nearly as much. The downside? Semi-autos can be a bit more sensitive to ammo and maintenance. Run junk ammo and never clean it, and you'll eventually gum it up. But if you're willing to keep it lubed and feed it quality defensive shells, it's a very comfortable option for home defense. Here's your decision checkpoint. If you want absolute tank-like reliability and don't mind racking the slide, lean pump. If you want speed and comfort above all, and you'll maintain your gun, semi-auto deserves a hard look. Now let's get into what a lot of people secretly love, the lever action .410. Lever action .410s are basically cowboy guns that grew up and decided to get serious. You get a tubular magazine, a lever you cycle under the trigger guard, and a very compact, fast-handling package. In close quarters, a good lever gun points naturally and cycles smoothly once you're used to it. You run that lever with authority and it spits out shells like a sewing machine. For some shooters, the lever action is less intimidating than a pump, and the manual of arms is surprisingly intuitive. Shoot, lever, shoot, lever. From a home defense standpoint, lever .410s give you several advantages: compact overall length, often threaded for chokes or accessories, and a look that doesn't scream tactical shotgun if that matters in your household. The trade-off is that topping off under stress takes some practice, and you really need to train that lever stroke so you don't short-cycle it. But if you want a defensive tool that doubles as a fun range toy and hunting gun, a .410 lever might be the ultimate multitasker. Speaking of ultimate, we have to talk about the modern wave of compact .410 firearms, the shotgun-adjacent guns built to compete with the famous non-stocked 12-gauge brutes. Think short barrels, bird's head grips or compact stocks, rails for optics and lights, and controls set up purely for close quarters work. These .410 versions take that format and make it far more manageable. Instead of wrestling with a 12-gauge fire breather that tries to jump out of your hands, you're dealing with a lighter, softer shooting tool that's actually realistic for people who aren't large or experienced. This category really shines if you live in a small house, trailer, or apartment where maneuverability trumps everything. A compact .410 with a weapon light and a red dot can be brought on target quickly without telegraphing your movements through doorways. Again though, this is not a toy. You still have to respect muzzle blast and over-penetration, and you still have to train. But we can't talk about .410 home defense without mentioning the spicy one, .410 revolvers like the famous Judge-style guns. These are revolvers with long cylinders that can fire both .45 Colt and .410 shells. On the cool factor scale, they're a 10. As a home defense tool, they're more niche. The big plus is versatility. You can load a mix of .410 buckshot and .45 Colt. They're typically shorter overall than long guns, and they're easier to stash in small lockboxes. Modern home defender variants often ship with longer barrels, accessory rails for optics and lights, and blast shields to manage the side blast from those .410 shells. So who is this type of gun for? Someone who insists on a handgun form factor but wants the option of shot patterns at very close ranges. The recoil is surprisingly manageable for a gun that size, especially with .410 defensive loads. The downside is limited capacity, usually 5 rounds, and the need for solid revolver skills. For many people, a long gun is still easier to shoot accurately under stress. But if you're already a revolver person, or you need something compact that can live in a quick-access safe by the bed, a .410 revolver can absolutely be part of a layered home defense plan. Now, let's pause and talk ammo, because this is where a .410 stops being just a small game gun and becomes a legitimate defensive option. With .410, you basically have 3 broad categories that matter for home defense: birdshot, buckshot, and specialty defensive loads. Birdshot is what most people grew up shooting, great for small game and clay targets. At very close range, it can be devastating, but it loses penetration quickly as distance increases. Inside a few yards, it's not something you want pointed at anything you care about. Beyond that, it starts to become less consistent for stopping a determined threat. That's why many defensive shooters lean toward buckshot, or specifically engineered .410 defense shells. Buckshot loads in .410 might use fewer and smaller pellets than 12 gauge, but inside a home, those pellets can still create a nasty wound channel. The patterns at 5 to 10 yards are tight enough that you still have to aim, which is a good thing. It forces responsible shooting, but you still get that multi-projectile hit that shotguns are famous for. Modern specialty loads go a step further, mixing pellets and slugs or using proprietary shot stacks designed specifically for short-barreled guns and defense distances. You can completely change how a .410 behaves just by changing what you feed it. A cheap birdshot shell and a tuned defensive buckshot round are like two different animals. So if you're going to trust a .410 with your life, spend the money to pattern defensive ammo in your specific gun. See how it hits at 3, 7, and 10 yards. Know what every trigger press actually does in your house. So here's what I want you to do after watching this. Picture your actual house, your hallway lengths, your doorways, where your kids sleep, where your neighbors are, where you'd actually take cover. Now imagine running a 12 gauge there. Then imagine the same scenario with a controllable, lightweight .410 that you've trained with. Which one do you honestly see yourself handling better at 3 a.m.? If the .410 makes more sense for your body, your experience, and your space, don't let gun counter myths talk you out of it. Get the right platform, feed it the right ammo, and put in the training. That combination is what turns just a little .410 into a serious tool. If you found this breakdown helpful, here's your next step. Drop a comment telling me which .410 setup you'd trust the most in your home. A pump, a semi-auto, a lever gun, or one of those wild .410 revolvers. Hit subscribe if you want more real-world, no-nonsense breakdowns like this, where we look past the hype and figure out what actually works for normal people. And share this video with that friend who still thinks the .410 is only for kids and rabbits, because the moment they see what modern .410 platforms can really do, they might rethink what home defense looks like.